Welcome to the Accounting Profits and Prosperity Show. I am your host, Louis Prosperi. Today, we have a great show for you. Our guest wrote a book called Taking the Work Out of Networking, Your Guide to Better Connections. She also worked at Google when Google was only 500 employees and was the editorial director of Twitter. Please welcome to the show, Karen Wickre.
Thank you, Louis.
It's a pleasure having you, Karen. I understand that you have a very interesting background. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, well, I'm talking to you from San Francisco, where I've lived for almost 40 years. And the great majority of that time, I've worked in tech. I fell into it by accident. My skills, I think I brought to the table were always writing and editing. And I thought I was the last person to ever touch a personal computer back in the 80s, but it turns out I wasn't. And so I just got into one job that led to, the next one. That was kind of how it went. It's not a strategic plan on my part, but I've worked for big companies and startups. And these days I'm an editorial consultant, but essentially the same thing. It's like clearer communication from companies to their audiences. That's what I strive for. And my work will never be done.
Yeah, clear communication is the goal for everyone, I think. What's interesting in the profession that we're in, professional accounting, we have a problem with clear communication because transitioning how we speak, accountants speak,
right,
to how our customers speak, sometimes there's a gap there, right? So you've also worked in very interesting places like Twitter, and you've launched a Google blog. Sorry, but
way back Google. In the day, yes, the Google blog back in the day. Yeah, I did work at Google from about 2002 when it was still a quite young and small company, launched in 99 essentially, but it was still under 1,000 people at that point. So I was lucky enough to start out as a contractor, then eventually get hired full time, and I stayed there till 2011. So I feel like I watched Google grow up, and that was a fantastic experience in many ways, and including managing the Google blog.
How is that? You know the movie that I'm going to refer to, right? The Google movie that had...
the interns?
Yeah, the interns.
Yeah.
That's right. Is it really that cool in there? That looks like I come from an accounting side where we have a totally different environment. I thought, wow, I've never seen a workplace like that. Was that really how it was?
Well, I couldn't swear to every detail in the movie being really how it was, but the idea, it's been true in Silicon Valley for a long time that you want to pamper the engineers because they're the ones that make the products that make everything else go, right? I have to say, I think Google set kind of a new bar for this by not just the engineers. We all got to, have a lava lamp in the early days if we wanted. But the idea was have a campus-like atmosphere where there were, break rooms and coffee bars and whatnot, and things to sort of get away from the screens of coding and whatnot, and just have amenities there. And some people say, well, that just takes you away from the real world. But the fact is, in Silicon Valley, most of these companies were founded really in what were suburbs and small office parks. So there were not downtown locations with restaurants and coffee shops nearby. So you had to to be more efficient and save time. And yes, maybe to keep people at work, you brought the food in, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then as they grew, more perks, it became sort of an arms race between the different companies in terms of
interesting
perks.
That is really interesting. Who has the coolest place to work at, right? That's an interesting arms race.
Pre-pandemic, that was the thing. And I think, they will kind of work on that again because I think they've invested a lot in real estate, obviously, all of these companies now. So they want people to be there some of the time.
True. Actually, what's funny is the pandemic or COVID, whatever you want to call it, made us realize how important interaction was.
Exactly.
And also made us realize that the office wasn't as focal with all the technology we have today. The office doesn't necessarily have to be the focal point. Now it's more like a desirable place to be rather than you had to be there because people now missed it. It was an interesting concept because before COVID, people go, I would love to work home all day, every day.
Yeah.
We're noticing the reverse now. When can I come back to the office? Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think both are important, and I think the companies that have figured out some hybrid model are probably doing the best because people like the flexibility of being able to, go to the dentist or whatever, pick up the kids. But at the same time, you need some connection with people that is not just on Zoom or not just on the phone or whatever. And there's some benefit to coming together.
So you said connection, which leads right into my next question, because this is something that even though you fell into the tech companies and everything, connecting and being a good connector was part of your superpower at the time, I think, or it's something that you've really adopted. And tell us a little bit about that. First of all, why is being a connector so important? It doesn't matter what industry you're in, but why is it so
Oh,
important?
that's right.
Secondly, what do you need to be a good connector?
Well, I would say I'd make a little distinction between being able to, I hate the verb network, but to network and make connections with people is a slightly different flavor than being a connector. I am a connector, and this is something I think Malcolm Gladwell first wrote about some years ago. I know a lot of people. I'm old now, so I have a long history of, knowing people in different fields and being in touch with them so I can connect other people, which is what I like doing. Some people are good at that, but perhaps the broader application that you're asking about has to do with being open to meet new people, and that can include definitely on the job, like within an organization, and being open to introductions and wanting to help people if they have questions about your company or whatever else comes up, and staying in touch with them. And that is what makes for a good network, so that you can continue to be in touch with people that you don't work with any longer, that you met
Right.
once, etc. And the superpower there, I think, is this is kind of a life skill. It goes beyond getting some help to find a new job, although that's an important application.
Sure.
But I would say we're all going to need help from people we're not friends with, people who are not in our family. We're going to need advice. We're going to need to hear other experiences. And these days, we're somewhat used to that because of the social platforms, right? We can ask a question on Facebook or
Mhm.
Instagram or whatever, even Twitter or the new Twitter's coming up, and
Sure.
people will respond and say, "Don't do this, do that. I recommend this." We're used to that, and that's a good thing. So this just takes it a little bit farther to say, let me reach out to my friend that I used to work with because I think they know about this, and that's the keeping in touch part that's so important.
You actually mentioned something back in the old days. You had to have a Rolodex. I don't know if you know what that meant, that thing on your desk with all the little cards. You had to update them. You had to make little notes. But you just mentioned the social network.
Yeah.
And do you think connecting or being a connector or the ability to connect is better now than before? Or is it because it's so wide that it's more difficult now to utilize it effectively?
I think they help tremendously for this reason. And I would remind people all of networking comes down to a one-to-one connection, not a one-to-many or, I'm alone and everyone else has all the answers they need. It's never like that. What social gives us, the connections we already have with people we already have some reason to be connected to, right, is that it's a given now that we casually can see, oh, Louis was on vacation. It looked like a nice trip.
Right.
Or someone on LinkedIn, even though that's very professionally focused, which is great. I see that, so-and-so got a promotion or they're in a new job. I want to congratulate them. We see this, whether or not we respond to every item that comes up for us in our feeds, we see those. Yep. And so it becomes a point of conversation. When you do reach out to someone, even if you haven't talked to them in a long time, you could say, hey, I saw you had a nice vacation. I hope it was great. I saw that you moved to a new city. I see that you finished your, degree program or whatever the thing is. And then that becomes a way into conversation. Again, very important with someone you're not really directly in touch with that often, but it's
That's
a nice opening really that shows you're paying attention.
You're right. The new social fabric that we have, we tend to talk about ourselves more on social media than we do in public, right? Like if you meet someone in a hall, right, you're going to start with how's the weather or what do you think of right before you get to the real stuff. But now if you if you've seen them on social network, the first thing you do, how was that vacation? You're absolutely right. And that changes the entire connectivity of the program.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. So being a good connector, I want to look at that a little bit because connecting doesn't necessarily have to be about yourself, right? Making sure you're connected, but connecting other people as well.
Yep.
And then when you become the connector, people then come to you to find stuff for them, right?
Right.
And I'm assuming that was one of the advantages when you started to connect. And how do you take being an effective connector beyond just networking and allowing people just to come to you as a source?
Well, I think for me, this all started long before the internet, although I didn't really realize it then, but I always liked staying in touch with people. And I mean, this goes back to my college days where I would have phone calls or, we'd send letters and cards in the mail. I know it's a kind of strange concept now, but I tended to be one who always had a sense of where people were, what they were up to, even if, as I say, months or even years went by. I just was one to reach out this would largely be a friend group, I would say, in the early days. And the thing that that maybe kind of accelerated it is Silicon Valley was very much been this way a long time. I think now lots of other kind of work environments are this way too. Silicon Valley, very fluid place. People move around in different jobs and all the time, including me. And so you're curious about, well, how's that new job working out? How do you like working at Apple or a non-name brand place? I mean, there's lots of places. How do you like, being at your new place? And because technology has moved so fast, people are constantly reinventing themselves. It's not like you're in a static position for a long time. So by dint of wanting to stay in touch with people I had worked with or had met along the way, I just always had a sense of, oh, something was in the news yesterday about that company, or, oh, my friend works there. I wonder if they saw this story. So it's sort of like being a clipping service in a certain sense,
Right.
to go back to another old technology, but also just saying, I wonder what you think about this.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I want to know what you think because, we're all in this kind of fast moving world together. And that can include, did you see what Executive X said and how crazy that was? I won't name any names here, but
Right.
you can
I
imagine.
got it.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just staying in touch and doesn't have to be about sort of daily news or hard news. I'm not
Yeah.
particularly a sports fan, but I have friends who are, rabid about some team or another. So I pay attention enough to know, are they in the playoffs? Did something big happen that was good or bad,
Yeah.
so that I can say to them, sorry about that, or
Right.
congratulations, as the case would
Right.
be.
Right.
And that's just a
Yes.
point of being in touch. That's not a request for a meeting. That's not a favor. That's just, I do that as a matter of course. And it's just a way of being sort of top of mind with somebody for a minute. And as I say, that's sort of bolstered by whichever social platforms we're connected to other people on. We have a kind of rolling sense of what's
That's true.
happening, right? And so you
So
just sort of tap into that every so often.
yeah. So I was thinking it kind of makes me feel like people love to talk about themselves, right? It's just a natural thing.
Yeah.
The social network allows us to do that much more readily,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So by saying those key components, it's almost like you care, right? It's like
Yes,
you're
exactly.
interested in them
I'm paying
beyond like
attention.
what can you do for me, right? So
Exactly.
I think that's brilliant. Now this goes right into your book, right? So because the thing is, when we talk about networking, and I know you don't like the word, but that's basically
It's the
the only
word.
word I can come up with. So your book says taking the work out of networking, and we all love not to work. So
Right.
how do you actually take the work out of networking? What can they learn? What can they do to make it at least fun?
Right. Well, the main thing is I've talked to so many people who basically say, I've been in my job for 8 or 10 years, so I've kind of let my network go, right? Because
Right.
I've had a
Yeah.
longer number of years. So that I would say is a mistake, but it doesn't take very much to sort of rectify that. And I say that because it is so easy to keep in touch with people informally without having any requests. But the thing that makes us so tense about, oh God, I have to go out and network because I need a new job, is that we haven't been in touch, right? We haven't had any sort of back and forth. So then you feel like, now I have a need and I might be desperate. There might be a time limit, or something. The clock is ticking.
Right.
So rather than have that, if you can make brief kind of touch point, what I call loose touch connections with people in between the times of need, which is to say, just broadly speaking, keeping in touch without a lot of request for time,
I
then
see.
you are in touch. And then you can say, hey, could I, and this could even be by email, it just can, or text, whatever, can I make time with you at your convenience to talk to you about this specific thing? I want to learn more about that company. I want to learn more about that degree program. I want to learn more about fill in the blank. And when you do that, you're saying, well, I don't want to take too much of your time. It's at your
Right.
convenience. And then, can I do anything for you? And if not now, please tell me when I can. And for follow up, I mean, I will often say, well, the conversation we just had, I was thinking about you because now I've read such and such, and here's this story, and here's something else for you that made me laugh. Could be a cartoon, right? Could be a video, but it's something tied to what you already know about that person. And to
So
me, that's a warm up in the morning before I get started on any work I'm doing. It's sort of like, well, who's top of mind? Who comes to mind when I kind of look at the day's news or, what are people talking about? And then I might just send a note to 2 or 3 people without, no request for anything. They
Right,
may
right.
never answer, but it's
So
just,
Karen, you just mentioned something.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt, but I
no,
don't.
that's
I
fine.
have this train of thought that
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
want to miss
So
because so when you're saying connecting, you're literally saying one to one connecting, not
one
when they
to one.
send out this general. Because when people say when they do the general stuff, like they said, I did this or that, or can anybody help me, and it's just
Yeah,
out there. That's
yeah.
not what you're talking about. That's not
No,
effective,
that's
right?
right.
What you're
Well, it could be
okay,
effective. It could be effective if you're on LinkedIn and you say, I'm open to new opportunities or something like that.
right?
And people may see that if they have their notifications on, they may see that and reach out to you. So that may be fine, but that's not how you're going to get,
No,
you also want to read, you can have a summary that you want everybody to see, but
sure,
you also then want to reach out to people. Like, I mean, I've known quite a few people who lost their jobs in the last year, right? There've been a lot
yes,
of layoffs. And so they'll post on LinkedIn in particular, because that's the professional place, well, I'm in the layoff, I just lost my job. I'm going to take a break. I'm looking for this. Anyone that can help. Of course, you do that. But then individually, people come to mind, or someone might say to you, let me know if I can help. And you think about, well, maybe they could. Like, let me just be open to a conversation with people, even if I wasn't thinking about them, even if I don't know what advice
right.
they have. Let me just open that up. That's the way to do it. But that is all one to one.
That's a refreshing concept because social media is designed for
If you
one to
blanket,
many,
yeah,
right?
that's
I think bringing it back to a one-to-one networking. And the reason why I'm saying that from a professional perspective is referrals is one of our largest for professional accounting firms. I'm pretty sure other
sure.
professions. Referrals is the number one way we
Yeah,
attract
yeah,
customers, right?
yeah.
But it's usually related to people who know us or we have a
That's right.
direct connection,
Yeah,
right? So I love the fact that the top of mind thing is so you get up in the morning and go see something going on my network list. Who does this refer to? And you're
yeah.
only doing 2 or 3 at a time. So you can build a pretty healthy network and connectivity. You don't have to sit there and go through your 1,000 or 2,000 list every day, right?
Oh, no, definitely not. Don't recommend. Well, you never get anything else done. Yeah, no, it's much more about the occasional thing. And something might be like, this is a small example. Recently, several women from a company I worked with more than 20 years ago, but
Right.
I'm still in touch with, something caused a couple of them to say, let's all get together for drinks, which we never do. And we did. And then that made me think of other people who weren't there.
Right.
Right. And so I just sent a note to 1 or 2 of them and said, we had some great stories and memories. I thought of you. How are you doing? I should add also the pandemic was an interesting time that I think one could still make some use of. And that is when we were all really cut off from each other and getting used to Zoom and all the rest of it. I mean, I heard from and I reached out to people I hadn't talked to in 10 years or more.
Wow.
We'd been connected on social. We might have said happy birthday or something like that, but not a direct one to one conversation. But there were people that I was like, I wonder how they're doing. So I would send a note and just say, where are you in all this? How is it affecting you? And you'd just have a conversation about that, right? Not
Wow.
about a job might come into it, but it was not specifically about that.
So, Karen, in this connectivity, have you ever gotten like a great opportunity or a great personal thing that happened because of just out of the blue, because of the connection? Do you have any stories that you could share with us?
Well, I do. And I mean, a lot of mine actually now have come from the fact that I had the book. And I have to
Right.
say, this November, my book will have been out 5 years. And here we are talking about it because of a connection we had through someone else. And that one came through someone else. You know what I mean? So you don't have to have a book to have that experience. It has kind of shown me how kind of the word of mouth and the fact that somebody sees a passing notice of something and they think, oh, that might be interesting. Oh, let me reach out. So that happens to me quite a lot, accelerated by a book. But the fact is, it happens kind of every day for people, I think, if we just pay attention to it and are sort of open. And I think the biggest barrier to that is often people thinking rather too narrowly about who could help me or who's going to have an answer. And the fact is, we don't know a lot of times. There was a study many years ago that I cited in my book about the power of weak ties. And it was specifically about finding a job. Our job referrals often do not come from friends and family, right? They come from
True.
people we know less well well, may have met once through an introduction from somebody else that we may not know well. Those are weak ties, and they are often the ones that lead to professional connection. But it could also be, oh, my friend knows somebody who knows a photographer who could do family portrait, or my mom is in, an elder care situation now, and I want some advice. Oh, well, somebody else I know is going through that right now. You two should talk. You know what I mean? It's sort of like
Yeah.
that is the way it goes. It's serendipitous, but you have to say, well, I have been thinking about this actually. And on the professional side, to be top of mind with someone, this is why LinkedIn is an important sort of directory of people, even if you're not looking for a job, to have your kind of bona fides up there so that someone could say, oh yeah, who has that accounting specialty that someone was just asking me for advice on that. Let me see if I can, I know Louis. Let me see if he knows someone. You know what I mean?
I don't know if that should be on the top of your mind, but that's okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, it could be one day. You never know.
It could be. Yeah,
Yeah.
could be. Oh, that's great. The other aspect of this is for all us extroverts, Karen, like you and me, who love to be out there and socializing every day and talking to strangers. There's a group of us that are called introverts that,
Correct.
even though social media is kind of more easier to do, it's for introverts, it's kind of hard to interact. People that are a little afraid of being too
Right.
intrusive or wanting, and the ask, right? I guess the thing is people are more worried about their ask because they're afraid that they're bothering. How do you deal with
Yeah.
that if you're on
Yeah.
that side? Because you need to do what you suggested. It just improves quality of life, period.
Yeah.
You need to do it. So how do you do
Well,
that?
I think the thing is to understand everybody has needs or questions or problems that come up and they need advice or they want to
Right.
hear from someone else, whatever it is, and professional or not. And so the idea that you have no answers and someone else has all the answers, just that's not reality for any number of these things. And so we all kind of resonate, I think, when we hear a personal story of someone or, a professional job search that turned out well or didn't or whatever, we respond to, a story and we all have them. And so I think keeping in mind that you're going to have a one-to-one conversation, it's not a billboard
Right.
where, kind of having to overshare. And even for people who lurk, it doesn't mean you have to reveal more publicly. You do want to be kind of authentic and genuine in your private conversation, but only to the extent that you need, you say, could I have, 20 minutes of your time to talk about this? You're not talking to the hiring manager at the job, or whatever.
Right.
You're saying, could I? It's a kind of a scavenger hunt if you do have a particular thing you're looking for. It's like you would ask your friends about travel advice to, Portugal, right? You don't just ask one and you might hear from a few people, oh, you have to go to this place, you have to go to that place. Okay, then you get some consensus. With asking for advice, you're saying, can you give me your thoughts on this? And do you have suggestions for someone else I should talk to? Because that person's experience is only that person's experience, right? And so it's not like, hand me my next job. It's tell me something you know about the company or the field or that team or whatever it is, or the customers, whatever their reputation. And so you do that, and then you go on to the next one and the next one. When someone offers you an introduction to someone else, by all means, take it and follow the same thing at your convenience. You can't, if you show up and say, nice to meet you, I can talk to you at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, that's not going to go well, especially when you're the one doing the asking.
Right. Here's my schedule. Can you
Yeah.
fit it? I got it.
Yeah.
I think that works. I get that one. And it's funny too, right? Because when we're in person, we probably wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
What I
exactly.
noticed is that one-to-one interaction in person, you would never say to them, when you're
Wouldn't be a
meeting for the
joke.
first time, hi, how are you? I love you. I
Yeah.
love your book and everything. By the way, I'd like to talk to you. Can you make 2:00 tomorrow work for you? You
Right.
don't say that, right? But you do it. It's funny how you do it in an email or in
Yeah.
a text. It's interesting. So
EQ is an important part of this.
yeah.
High EQ.
Yeah, well done. Like I said, that's interesting because what you're really saying then is take the social media connectability, which is better, but pretend it's in real person,
Yeah.
real live action, and
Well, in
expect the
fact, it
same. Because
is a real person.
sorry, you're absolutely right. Not pretend. Yes,
Yeah.
it is. You're absolutely right. I got
Let's
that.
screen out of
But I
the way.
meant is, yeah. Let me rephrase that, Karen. The real person, instead of being on a screen like we are now, they're actually in front of you and just behave like they are really in front of you,
Yeah.
and behave the way you normally behave. And
Yeah,
for most of
that's
us,
right.
it is a little different. It's not the same.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I'd say we've learned pretty well about video chatting now, given the last few years, and pretty good substitute, right, for some things. And by the way, much better than flying across country for an hour meeting, as people used
If
to
you're an
do. And I
economic
hope
person,
don't do it so much.
environmentalist, I think the Zooming probably helped a lot of people on that side. Yeah. And I agree with you. I love to travel. I'm not about traveling, but traveling for fun and traveling for business are two different things. That's all I'm
Yes,
saying. That's
exactly.
all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So Karen, it looks like we have had a great time, and I think I could talk to you another 20 minutes easily, but we're coming to a close. Where can people reach you? How can they get a hold of you? And what are you doing right now?
So to reach me, my name, Karen Wickre, that's
Yeah.
KarenWickre.com. It's my website. That has more info about me and the book and kind of all the rest of it. I'm also, of course, on LinkedIn. And I would say one piece of advice about LinkedIn, don't just go with the generic LinkedIn language. That's like, LinkedIn says we should be connected. So how about it? Tell
That's a
me
good one. I like,
tell me a little more why
yeah.
specifically. And I need to do the same. I mean, it's like, well, why? The algorithm may think so, but why should we humans think so? And what I'm doing now, as I say, I left Twitter in 2016. And so since then, I've been doing editorial consulting for companies, a lot of businesses that need either editing, a lot of company blogs out there, a lot of company blog posts.
Yeah.
And sometimes I ghost write op-eds or commentary from executives, help with messaging and style guides and that sort of thing for companies, all with the same quest, de-jargonify.
Fantastic. Karen, once again, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, Louis, it's been really fun. Thank you for having me.
And to you, our valued viewers, thank you for tuning into this episode. We kindly ask that you please subscribe to our channel. And as always, we welcome your feedback and comments below. Until next time, stay hydrated, always be curious, and above all, be well.